Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Got a crazy story out of Kentucky, but this actually happens in other states as well. Casey, Philip, Keith, and Nathan all sent it to me. Thank you very much. But out of Kentucky.com, or the Herald Leader newspaper, John Cheeves wrote the story where a Kentucky man wrongly jailed for 14 months was asked to pay for his jail stay. So the man goes to jail for 14 months, but he's released because there's not enough evidence to charge him. After he's released, they send him a bill and say, you got to pay for the time you spent in jail, even though you were wrongly jailed. So a Winchester factory worker spent 14 months locked in jail before prosecutors agreed to drop the case because repeated searches of his apartment and his digital devices failed to turn up evidence against him. So they had not enough evidence, they let him go. I'm not going to mention the man's name because if you mention someone's name in a story like this, it just makes his situation worse. The man was not even put on trial, so there's that. But second of all, he was accused of a rather serious crime, and it involved child pornography. And my concern is that even me saying those words right there might cause problems with YouTube. But I'm going to say it one time, and that's it. So prosecutors dropped the charges, but as he walked free, his life is now in ruins. The Clark County Detention Center handed him a bill for $4,000, citing a Kentucky state law that he has to pay for the cost of his incarceration. Now, the Supreme Court of Kentucky, the Kentucky Supreme Court, is going to be asked to decide if that's constitutional. He is suing Clark County and its jailer to ask that that bill be dismissed. And so, yes, we're fighting over $4,000. The man's in front of the Supreme Court of Kentucky. And you might say, Steve, what's it cost to take a case to the Kentucky Supreme Court? A little bit more than $4,000, but it's a principle. And here's the thing. If you get convicted of a crime or you plead guilty and a judgment gets entered against you and there's jail time involved, you will get hit with costs. And some of those costs might be the cost of your incarceration. That's common for people who are convicted of crimes, and it makes sense. So the man's lawyer calls the jail's actions an affront to the bedrock American principle that a citizen is presumed innocent until proven guilty. The government can't punish people unless and until they are found guilty of the crimes they are alleged to have committed. Yet Kentucky counties have for years routinely kept the money they confiscate from persons on admission to jail, allegedly to offset the costs of their confinement, after the charges against such persons have been dismissed or they've been acquitted. So far, the justice system has mostly ruled against the man. Last year, the Kentucky Court of Appeals said it was okay for jails to bill prisoners for their confinement, even if they're never convicted of any crime. The U.S. District Judge Robert Weir wrote 2 years ago on a separate case, the Constitution does not guarantee that only the guilty will be arrested. A U.S. District Judge wrote 2 years ago, dismissing a separate malicious prosecution lawsuit that the man filed against Clark County seeking damages from the episode. But that is a different matter. So he's saying in his state lawsuit, look, you can't charge me when you put me in jail wrongly and then let me go and I haven't been convicted of anything. You can't charge me for that. Now, the separate lawsuit where he's going after them for the malicious prosecution, that's a different standard. So that second suit has since been reinstated by a federal appeals court and is scheduled for trial in June. So a district court judge threw it out. Court of Appeals reinstated it, so it's going back down for trial. In October of 2013, acting on a tip from Lexington police that allegedly linked the man's internet protocol address to a video downloaded from the web, the Clark County Sheriff's Department raided his home in a Winchester apartment complex and arrested him and put his bond at an amount he could not pay. In the audience, I know there's several people, including Nathan, who know a lot about how the internet works. And the idea that you are in an apartment complex using Wi-Fi, and they come in and they say, hey, somebody used this Wi-Fi, it must be you. That can often be a problem. After repeated searches over coming months, police found absolutely no evidence in the man's apartment or on any of the digital devices they seized, including a cell phone, computer tablet, Xbox, server, modem, printer, and DVDs. They found nothing. So the reason he was arrested was a tip from Lexington police. He waived his right to counsel, but steadfastly asserted his innocence. Finally, prosecutors acknowledged that someone else around the large apartment complex could have accessed the man's wireless network, which was unsecured. Now, tip to all the viewers in the audience. If you got Wi-Fi, put a password on it. I'm just telling you. Because this wouldn't have happened if that had been the case. With no evidence that he had possessed anything illegal, they dropped the charges against him. He was released from jail in December of 2014, again after spending 14 months in jail, again based on a tip. In a deposition in one of his lawsuits, he later said he had to leave Winchester, because it's his hometown, because of the publicity over his arrest. He lost his apartment, his car, his job, most of his social circle, and the quote is, he lost his reputation. It's shot. I mean, I've got people that I've known for years won't have anything to do with me anymore because they believe the allegations of the charges that were dropped. In billing the man, Clark County says it's supported by a state law that requires prisoners to help counties with the costs of their own incarceration. The jail's bill is based on a booking fee of $35, a $10 per diem for each day of the confinement, $5 fee for hygiene supplies, and $2.69 for hygiene replacement supplies. That's according to county's lawyers and what they put in their brief to the Supreme Court of Kentucky. They said this isn't punishment, it's just the county's cost of doing business. They wrote, for their services, jailers can impose and collect fees authorized by state law to partially offset the costs of confinement. The statute is not punitive, and there's nothing illegal or inherently unfair about imposing fees for services rendered to persons in custody. Neither the Kentucky Constitution, the Kentucky revised statutes, or common law require a refund of those fees if the person is found innocent. Over a recent 5-year period, Kentucky jails reported billing nearly $20.9 million in booking and housing fees from inmates. Only half of the roughly 80 local jails appear to charge those, reporting sums between $50,000 and $300,000, while some jails did not claim any inmate fees. So some jails don't even do this. So whether an inmate is billed depends on where he happens to be incarcerated. The Clark County Jail did charge fees with mixed success. Financial records provided to the Herald Leader in 2020 showed that over the previous 2 years, the jail billed inmates $107,000 for booking and housing fees, while only managing to collect $12,000. So they send the bills, but they often don't get the money. The man at the center of this case, his lawyer, says that the way the state law is written makes it clear that inmates like him who aren't convicted cannot be billed for their jailhouse stays. Here's the quote of what the law says. A prisoner in a county jail shall be required by the sentencing court to reimburse the county for expenses incurred by reason of the prisoner's confinement. The sentencing court. Well, this man was never convicted, never sentenced, therefore there's no sentencing court. So the only way he can be required to pay this money is he's required by a sentencing court. And it sounds like the legislature, when they drafted this, were anticipating that you go to jail and you're found guilty, you got to pay for your jail time. That's what it sounds like they intended this law to do. So there was no sentencing court in this man's case. He was never tried, convicted, or sentenced, his lawyers wrote. That invalidates the argument that he owes Clark County anything for his detention. Confiscating and keeping the money of innocent people to offset the cost of their confinement violates the fundamentally American presumption of innocence, his lawyers wrote. And by the way, earlier they said that there's nothing punitive about having someone pay for their time in jail. And there is. One of the most common forms of punishment in America is a fine. You pay a fine. So when you pay money, it's punitive. If you don't want to pay it, I'm standing here, I've got $10. It's my money. If I get forced to pay that to somebody, that's a punishment. That's punitive. So the idea that, oh, no, we call it reimbursement, therefore it's not a fine. Does it matter what it's called? I've represented a lot of people in court on criminal matters, and I explain to them as we go into the sentencing that, by the way, you're going to get hit with a whole bunch of fines, costs, all kinds of stuff, and it's going to get very expensive. And oftentimes we know what that is going in because we have some kind of guidelines that we can look at. And your fines might be up to this much, your cost might be up to this much. But when you go to the front window and pay, you cut them one check. Does it really matter to the defendant if it's $100 fines and $500 costs, or $500 fines and $100 costs? Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. So paying money against your will is punitive. So to tell somebody that, oh no, you're simply reimbursing the jail for room and board, doesn't make it any, it's no different. It's like civil asset forfeiture. It's theft. It's theft. Simply calling it something else doesn't change it, okay? So if I decided to start calling my dog a cat, you'd say, no, Steve, it's still a dog. No. I call it a cat. It's still a dog. No. But I call it a cat. Doesn't matter. So charging people money that they don't want to pay when it's the government and it's involved in some kind of allegations, that's punitive. That's punitive. So the man was billed $4,000 for a 14-month stay in jail, which they now admit was wrongful. And they let him out, but they wanted to pay the money anyway. And they've been doing this to lots of people. And one of the people, and I forgot which one it was, but one of the people who sent me this email said, I have a friend that this happened to in another state. And I've heard of these things happening elsewhere. So it's possible this could happen to you in another state as well. But the idea that you get arrested, you go to jail, turns out you didn't do anything wrong, they let you go. They make you pay for that? And I know some people are going to say, Steve, the fact that they let you go doesn't mean you didn't do anything wrong. In America, until you are convicted, you are innocent. You are innocent. You are not guilty. So, and I know again, I've toyed with the idea of putting a section at the end of every video and calling it errata, which is a comment regarding making corrections and addressing all of the things that people will object to. Because I know that someone's going to object and go, Steve, innocence and not guilty are two different things. In the eyes of the law, functionally they're the same. Functionally they're the same. It's like saying 3 + 1 and 2 + 2 are not the same. They're not, but they both equal 4. So there you go. But I won't do the errata just yet. One of these days. But from the Herald Leader, and John Cheeves wrote, it's a great article from Kentucky.com. And Casey, Philip, Keith, and Nathan all sent it to me. Thanks a lot. This Kentucky man was wrongly jailed for 14 months. Then they billed him for his stay. So he right now is in front of the Kentucky Supreme Court getting it straightened out, and I hope he does. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. If we humans had tails to wag when we're happy like our pet dogs, we might understand each other better.